She dropped her wedding ring into the courthouse fountain. It sank slowly, catching the light one last time before disappearing into the murky water. Eleanor Mitchell watched it go without flinching. Behind her, the doors of the Manhattan Supreme Court waited. Inside, her husband's lawyers were already laughing, already counting their victory. They didn't know. None of them knew. 5 years she had scrubbed his floors, worn his hand-me-down shoes, smiled when he called her charity case at dinner parties. Today, Eleanor wasn't smiling. Today, she was going to war. If you want to see how this story ends, subscribe and follow me to the end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let me tell you how a quiet nurse from Baltimore brought a billionaire to his knees. The penthouse smelled like expensive cologne and betrayal. Eleanor stood by the window, her reflection ghost-like against the Manhattan skyline. She was wearing a cardigan she'd bought at Goodwill 3 years ago. The sleeves were fraying. She didn't care anymore. "You're still here." Marcus Washington's voice cut through the silence like a blade. He didn't look up from his phone. He never looked up anymore. "I'm waiting for an explanation," Eleanor said quietly. Marcus laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. "An explanation? That's rich coming from you." He finally turned to face her. God, he was handsome. 6'2", clean-shaven shoulders, built like he still played the football that got him out of Southeast D.C. His custom suit probably cost more than her annual salary at the clinic. Back when she still had a job. Back before he made her quit. "The papers, Ellie." Marcus tapped the coffee table where a stack of documents sat. "Sign them. Take the 50,000. Go back to wherever it is people like you go. People like me. Poor people. Simple people." He shrugged. "I thought that was what I wanted. A woman with no drama, no complications. Turns out I was wrong. I've evolved. You haven't." Eleanor felt the words land like punches, each one precise, each one designed to wound. "I gave you 5 years, Marcus. And I gave you 5 years of living like a queen." He gestured around the penthouse. "You think you would have seen the inside of 432 Park Avenue without me? You were a clinic nurse in Baltimore, Ellie. You were nobody. I was somebody before I met you." "Were you?" Marcus walked to the bar and poured himself a whiskey. "Pappy Van Winkle. $400 a bottle. Because from where I'm standing, I made you. I took you from nothing and gave you everything. The least you could do is leave gracefully." The elevator chimed. Eleanor watched as the doors opened and Destiny Brooks walked in like she owned the place. Maybe she already did. Destiny was everything Eleanor wasn't. Tall, flashy, dripping in designer labels. She had 500,000 Instagram followers and the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Destiny didn't even glance at Eleanor. She walked straight to Marcus and took the glass from his hand. "Is she still here, baby?" Destiny sipped the whiskey. "The movers are downstairs. We have the Met Gala thing tonight." She was just leaving. Marcus looked at Eleanor with eyes that held nothing. No love, no guilt, no recognition of the woman who'd nursed him through pneumonia, who'd organized his first investor pitch, who'd held his hand when his mother died. "Weren't you—" Eleanor felt something crack inside her. Not her heart that had been breaking slowly for months. Something else. Something deeper. A wall she'd built 5 years ago. A promise she'd made to herself. Stay small. Stay invisible. Don't let them see who you really are. She'd kept that promise through every dinner party where Marcus introduced her as my little charity case. Through every night he slept in the guest room because she didn't fit the aesthetic. Through every cruel word Destiny texted to the group chat, not knowing Eleanor could see them on Marcus's iPad. Poor thing actually thinks he loves her. LOL. She dresses like a social worker. Because she basically is one. Marcus says she's too stupid to understand credit cards. Can you imagine Eleanor had read every message? She'd said nothing. She'd done nothing. But silence, she was learning, wasn't the same as surrender. Fine, Eleanor said softly. I'll go. Marcus looked surprised. He'd probably expected her to cry to beg. That's what he was used to. That's what made him feel powerful. Good, he said. See, that wasn't so hard. Eleanor picked up her purse. It was a cheap thing, synthetic leather bought at a Baltimore thrift store years ago. She reached inside and pulled out her key card, the access to this penthouse, to this life, to everything she thought she'd wanted. She placed it on the glass coffee table. The sound was small. Final. I'll see you in court, Eleanor said. Marcus barked out a laugh. Court baby, my lawyers will eat you alive. Bradford and Sterling, you know what they cost more per hour than you made in a month at that little clinic. I know. You can't afford a public defender, let alone someone who can fight them. Maybe. You've got nothing, Ellie. No money, no connections, no power. You're going to walk into that courtroom and they're going to tear you apart. Eleanor looked at him. Really looked at him. This man she'd loved. This man she'd sacrificed for. This man who had no idea who he'd married. Maybe, she said again. But maybe not. She walked to the elevator. Her sneakers were silent on the marble floor. Another thing Marcus hated about her, how she refused to wear the expensive heels he bought. As the doors closed, she heard Marcus and Destiny laughing. Did you hear that? I'll see you in court. Where does she think she's going to get a lawyer legal aid? Probably. God, she's pathetic. I almost feel sorry for her. Don't. She knew what this was. She got 5 good years. Time to move on. The elevator descended silently. Eleanor's hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She stepped out onto Fifth Avenue. The city roared around her taxis, honking people rushing the endless hungry energy of Manhattan. She'd never felt so small. She pulled out her phone. It was an old iPhone, cracked screen, 3 years outdated. Marcus had offered to buy her a new one a dozen times, but she'd always refused. She couldn't explain why. Not then. Now she understood. Some part of her had always known this day would come. She dialed a number she hadn't called in 7 years. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice answered. Deep, cultured. The kind of voice that had addressed presidents and kings. Hello. Uncle Reginald. Eleanor's voice cracked. She hated that it cracked. It's me. It's Eleanor. Silence on the line. Heavy, weighted silence. Eleanor. The voice softened. My God, we've been looking for you for 7 years. We thought we didn't know if you were... I'm alive. Where are you? Are you safe? What's happened? Eleanor looked up at the tower where her husband was currently celebrating her departure. I'm in New York. And no, I'm not safe. I'm married. We know. We found out 2 years ago. Eleanor, why didn't you... I thought I could do it alone. I thought I could be normal. Her voice broke again. I was wrong. What do you need? Such a simple question. What do you need? In her family, those words meant something different than they did for normal people. They meant, what resources shall I mobilize? Which problems shall I make disappear? Whose life shall I destroy on your behalf? Eleanor had run from that world. She'd run from the weight of her last name, from the expectations, from the golden cage that came with being who she was. But sometimes you had to stop running. I need the lawyers, Eleanor said. I need the firm. Consider it done. Reginald's voice turned to steel. Welcome back, Eleanor. Or should I say, welcome back, Victoria. Eleanor closed her eyes. Victoria, the name she'd buried. The name that opened every door in America. Not Victoria, she said. Not yet. Not until I'm ready. Then what shall I tell them? Tell them I'm coming home, and tell them to prepare everything. 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 She hung up the phone. The next few days were a blur of preparation. Eleanor moved into a modest hotel in Midtown. She refused Reginald's offer of the family townhouse. Not yet. She wasn't ready to be that person yet. She met with the lawyers in a neutral location, a private room at the New York Public Library. 4 attorneys from Thornton Hayes and Associates, the most prestigious law firm on the Eastern Seaboard. They didn't handle divorces. They handled international treaties, sovereign debt, the quiet warfare of old money. But they handled this because Eleanor had asked. "We've compiled the file," the lead attorney said. Her name was Margaret Chen, and she had the calm efficiency of someone who'd negotiated with dictators. "Your husband's company Equity Now was founded with a $2 million seed investment from Archer Holdings." "I remember." "Archer Holdings is a subsidiary of the family trust. The money came from your inheritance, Mrs. Washington." "I know." "The land his factory sits on in Atlanta, purchased by Vesper Properties, another family subsidiary." "I know." "The contracts were structured with default clauses. If he ever filed for divorce against you without cause, if he ever engaged in public scandal or moral turpitude, he loses everything." Eleanor nodded. "I was there when my grandmother drafted the templates. She was very thorough." Margaret Chen looked at her with something like respect. "With permission, ma'am, why did you let him treat you this way? You could have stopped him at any point." Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. "Have you ever loved someone? Margaret really loved them." Yes." "Then you know that love makes you stupid. It makes you hope. You think maybe tomorrow he'll change. Maybe if I'm patient enough, kind enough, invisible enough, he'll see me. Really see me." Eleanor shook her head. "I gave him 5 years to prove he was different from the other men in my world. Men who saw my name before they saw my face. Men who wanted my money, my connections, my power." "And Mr. Washington?" Marcus saw a nobody from Baltimore. A simple woman he could control. A trophy that wouldn't challenge him. Eleanor smiled, but there was no warmth in it. He was so proud of himself for not being like those other men. He didn't want a rich wife. He wanted someone beneath him. And now he's going to learn that I was never beneath him. I was just waiting to see if he deserved to stand beside me. Margaret nodded slowly. "The preliminary hearing is in 3 weeks. Bradford and Sterling have filed for expedited judgment. They think you'll cave." "Good. Let them think that." "And what should we prepare?" Eleanor stood up. She walked to the window looking out at the city that had been her hiding place for 5 years. "Everything," she said. "Every contract, every clause, every document that proves what he owes me. And the other matter, the personal history." Eleanor's jaw tightened. The other matter. The thing she'd buried even deeper than her name. "Not yet. Pray we don't need it. And if we do..." Eleanor turned back to face the lawyers. In that moment, she didn't look like a quiet clinic nurse. She didn't look like a charity case. She looked like exactly who she was, the sole heir to one of the most powerful families in America. "If we do," she said, "then Marcus Washington will learn that he didn't just marry above his station. He married the woman who could destroy him without breaking a sweat." Meanwhile, Marcus was celebrating. He'd moved Destiny into the penthouse before Eleanor's boxes were even picked up. He'd thrown a party, just a small gathering, 50 of his closest friends and business associates, to mark his liberation. "To freedom," Marcus toasted, champagne glass raised. "And to the future Mrs. Washington whenever I decide to make it official." Destiny preened beside him. She was already posting to Instagram, already tagging luxury brands, already living the life she'd always wanted. "Baby," she whispered. "Did your lawyer call about the papers?" "Bradford? Yeah, he said it's a slam dunk. She signed a prenup. She's got no money for lawyers, and she's too proud to ask for charity." Marcus laughed. "She'll probably show up with some legal aid lawyer who'll tell her to take whatever we offer. I'm thinking 10 grand. That's generous, right?" "So generous." "That's me. Marcus Washington, self-made billionaire, generous to a fault. His phone buzzed. A text from Devon Price, his CFO. Heads up hearing moved up. Next week, Bradford wants to crush her fast. Marcus grinned. Good. End this quick. I've got the CNBC interview next month. One more thing, strange call from Thornton Hayes. Said they represent the defendant. Must be a mistake. Marcus frowned. Thornton Hayes. That name meant something, but he couldn't place it. He typed back. Probably some ambulance chaser using a fancy name. Don't worry about it. He pocketed the phone and returned to his party. He didn't see Destiny slip away to the bathroom. He didn't see her pull out her own phone and start recording. He didn't hear her whisper to herself, "Insurance, baby. Always keep insurance." The morning of the preliminary hearing arrived cold and gray. Marcus stepped out of his Escalade in front of the New York Supreme Court cameras flashing. He wore his best suit, custom Tom Ford navy blue power tie. He smiled for the photographers. This was his element, the spotlight, the attention. Bradford met him on the courthouse steps. Arthur Bradford was 62 years old, built like a bulldog, and had the reputation of never losing a case. Ready? Bradford asked. Born ready. Let's finish this. They walked into the courthouse, a phalanx of junior associates trailing behind them. The gallery was filling up, reporters, curious onlookers, a few of Marcus's business rivals hoping to see him stumble. He wouldn't. Marcus Washington didn't stumble. He'd crawled out of the worst neighborhood in D.C., taught himself to code, built a fintech empire from nothing. He'd been on the cover of Forbes' Black Enterprise Wired. He was untouchable. The defendant's table was empty. Marcus checked his watch. 9:55. Court started at 10:00. She's not coming, he whispered to Bradford. She's going to default. Probably. We'll move for immediate judgment. 9:58. 9:59. The bailiff stood. All rise. Judge Patricia Okonkwo took the bench. She was a stern woman in her late 50s, Nigerian-American, known throughout the legal community as the Hammer. She had no patience for theatrics, and even less for wealthy men who thought money made them untouchable. Blackwood versus Washington. She read, frowning slightly. Where is the defendant? Bradford stood, smoothing his jacket. Your Honor, it appears Mrs. Washington has chosen not to appear. We move for... The courtroom doors swung open. Everyone turned. A young man in an impeccable suit walked in first, carrying 3 leather briefcases. Behind him, another associate. Then another. Then a woman who moved like she was made of steel and ice. Margaret Chen, though Marcus didn't know her name. And then him. Reginald Thornton Hayes walked into the courtroom like he owned it. Because in a sense he did. 81 years old. Silver hair, silver cane, silver cufflinks. He moved slowly, deliberately, each step a statement. He wore a suit that whispered of old money, not flashy, not new, but perfectly tailored, probably owned by his father before him. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Bradford's face went white. He grabbed Marcus's arm. Oh my God, Bradford whispered. Who is that old man? That's Reginald Thornton Hayes, senior partner at Thornton Hayes & Associates. So, Marcus, they don't do divorces. They do international treaties. They represent sovereign nations. Why the hell is he here? And then Eleanor walked in. She wasn't wearing the frayed cardigan anymore. She wore cream, a perfectly tailored suit that fit her like armor. Her hair, usually pulled back in a messy bun, fell in sleek waves to her shoulders. She wore no jewelry except a small pin on her lapel, a simple thing, gold-shaped like a rose. She didn't look at Marcus. She walked to the defendant's table and sat down. Reginald Thornton Hayes sat beside her. Judge Okonkwo raised an eyebrow. Mr. Thornton Hayes, I haven't seen you in family court since... The Astor matter in '98, Your Honor. Reginald's voice carried effortlessly. I make exceptions for family. The word hung in the air. Family. Marcus leaned over to Bradford. What did he just say? Bradford was sweating. I don't know. I don't know. Your Honor, Bradford said, standing quickly. We request a brief recess to confer. Denied. Judge Okonkwo's voice cracked like a whip. You requested expedited proceedings, Mr. Bradford. You wanted this fast. Let's see how fast you can handle it. Mr. Thornton Hayes, you may proceed. The old man rose slowly. He buttoned his jacket with hands that didn't shake. Your Honor, Reginald said, the plaintiff has spent the past 3 weeks mocking my client. He has called her charity case. Nobody and simple. He has told this court through his filings that she has no assets, no standing, no right to anything but the scraps he chooses to throw her. He paused. He is mistaken. Marcus's heart began to pound. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. My client has lived as Eleanor Mitchell for 7 years. Reginald continued. She has lived humbly. She has served others. She has allowed her husband to believe he was the powerful one in their marriage. Reginald opened a single thin folder. But her name is not simply Eleanor Mitchell. The courtroom held its breath. Her name is Eleanor Victoria Thornton Hayes, sole heir to the Thornton Hayes medical fortune. Granddaughter of Victoria Thornton, who established the Thornton Medical Center and the Thornton Hayes Foundation. Reginald's voice dropped, and through her mother's side principal shareholder of the Hayes Atlantic Banking Group. Silence. Absolute, devastating silence. Marcus couldn't breathe. The Thornton Hayes family wasn't just rich. They owned the hospital where Marcus's mother had died. They owned the bank where Marcus had begged for his first loan. They had a wing at the Met, a building at Columbia, a foundation that funded half the medical research in the country. That's impossible, Marcus whispered. She was a nurse. She worked in a clinic. Eleanor finally looked at him. Her eyes held 5 years of pain, 5 years of silence, 5 years of waiting. Yes, she said softly. I was a nurse. I wanted to help people. I wanted to be normal. Her voice hardened. And I wanted to see if you could love me for me, not for my name, not for my money. She stood. You failed, Marcus. The courtroom erupted. Judge Okonkwo banged her gavel 3 times before the courtroom settled. Order. I will have order in this court. The murmuring died down, but the tension remained thick enough to choke on. Marcus sat frozen in his chair, staring at Eleanor like she'd grown a second head. His mind was racing, trying to process, trying to find the angle. It had to be a lie. Some elaborate con. His wife, his simple, quiet, cardigan-wearing wife, could not be a Thornton Hayes. Bradford leaned close. Marcus, we need to regroup. This changes everything. It changes nothing, Marcus hissed back. She's bluffing. She has to be bluffing. That's Reginald Thornton Hayes. He doesn't bluff. He doesn't need to. Your Honor. Marcus stood up before Bradford could stop him. This is ridiculous. I met this woman in a free clinic in Baltimore. She was wearing scrubs that had a coffee stain on them. She rode the bus to work. Mr. Washington. Judge Okonkwo's voice cut through like a blade. You are represented by counsel. Sit down and let your attorney speak for you. But she's lying. She has to be lying. Sit down. Something in the judge's tone made Marcus obey. He sank back into his chair, his heart pounding. Reginald Thornton Hayes hadn't moved. He stood perfectly still, watching Marcus with eyes that held something close to pity. Your Honor, Reginald said calmly, perhaps Mr. Washington would like to see documentation. We anticipated his disbelief. He nodded to Margaret Chen, who stood and approached the bench with a thick folder. Exhibit A, Eleanor Victoria Thornton Hayes' birth certificate, authenticated by the state of Connecticut and the Department of Vital Records. Exhibit B, DNA confirmation from 3 independent laboratories establishing her as the biological daughter of William Thornton Hayes III and Margaret Rose Hayes. Exhibit C, the trust documents establishing her as sole heir to the Thornton Hayes estate upon her 21st birthday. She placed each document before the judge. Judge Okonkwo examined them carefully. Her expression didn't change, but her eyebrows rose slightly. These appear to be in order. They are your honor. My niece chose to live under a simplified version of her name for personal reasons. Eleanor is her first name. Mitchell was her maternal grandmother's maiden name. There is nothing fraudulent about her identity. Bradford was on his feet. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. We were given no indication. You were given no indication because you didn't ask. Reginald's voice remained pleasant, but the steel underneath was unmistakable. Mr. Bradford, your client spent 5 years married to my niece. Did he ever once ask about her family, her background, her history? Bradford looked at Marcus. Marcus said nothing. I thought not. Reginald turned back to the judge. The plaintiff built his entire case on the premise that my client is a penniless woman seeking to exploit a wealthy man. The opposite is true. Mr. Washington has been living off my niece's generosity for the entirety of their marriage. That's a lie. Marcus was on his feet again. Mr. Washington. Judge Okonkwo slammed her gavel. One more outburst, and I will hold you in contempt. Sit down and remain silent. Marcus sat. His hands were shaking. Eleanor watched him. There was no triumph in her eyes, only a deep, weary sadness. Mr. Thornton Hayes. The judge said you mentioned generosity. Please elaborate. Certainly, Your Honor. Reginald opened another folder. 4 years ago, Mr. Washington's company Equity now received a $2 million seed investment from an entity called Archer Holdings. Mr. Washington, do you recall this investment? Marcus's throat was dry. Yes, it was an angel investor. Standard deal. Standard, Reginald nodded. Did you ever meet anyone from Archer Holdings in person? No. It was all done through lawyers and wire transfers. Did you ever wonder why an anonymous investor would give $2 million to a man with 3 failed startups and a credit score of 620? Marcus didn't answer. Archer Holdings is a subsidiary of the Thornton Hayes Family Trust. The investment came directly from my niece's personal inheritance. She instructed us to fund your dream, Mr. Washington. She believed in you. The words hit Marcus like physical blows. No, he whispered. No, that's not possible. It's not only possible, it's documented. Reginald pulled out another sheet. Page 42 of the investment agreement you signed. Section 19, subsection B. We call it the Integrity Clause. Bradford grabbed the document, scanning it frantically. What does it say, Mr. Bradford? Judge Okonkwo asked. Bradford's face had gone gray. It says, in the event that the principal borrower engages in acts of moral turpitude, files for divorce against the beneficiary without cause, or otherwise violates the trust relationship, the lender may call in the full principal immediately, along with all equity used as collateral. And what equity did Mr. Washington put up as collateral? Bradford looked like he might be sick. 51% of equity now, controlling interest. A gasp rippled through the gallery. Marcus grabbed Bradford's arm. I didn't read that. I never would have signed that. You did sign it, Bradford said quietly. Your signature is right here. Then it's fraud entrapment. Reginald Thornton Hayes actually smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Mr. Washington, my niece gave you $2 million because she loved you. She structured the loan with that clause because she hoped she would never need to use it. She gave you every opportunity to be a good man. He walked slowly toward the plaintiff's table, each step deliberate, each step bringing him closer to Marcus. She watched you take her money and claim you were self-made. She watched you go on CNBC and Forbes and call yourself a man who built everything from nothing. She watched you take credit for her sacrifice. Reginald stopped directly in front of Marcus. And still she stayed. Still she hoped. Because that's who Eleanor is. She sees the best in people, even when they show her the worst. Marcus couldn't meet the old man's eyes. But then you made a mistake, Mr. Washington. You threw her away. You called her worthless. You moved your mistress into the home my niece paid for, and you laughed about it." Reginald's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "You laughed at her." He turned and walked back to his table. "Your Honor, we are not here to contest the divorce. My client wants to be free of this man. However, we are here to enforce the terms of the contracts Mr. Washington willingly signed. He owes my client $2 million plus interest. He owes her controlling interest in his company. And there is the matter of the property." Bradford stood up shakily. "What property?" "The land in Atlanta, where Mr. Washington built his server facility. He purchased it from Vesper Properties 4 years ago." "I remember that deal," Marcus said. "I paid $12 million for that land." "No, Mr. Washington. Vesper Properties sold you that land for $1. That's impossible. I have the receipt." "You have a receipt for $12 million that was paid to Vesper Properties by Eleanor from her personal accounts. You received the land for a nominal fee because my niece wanted you to succeed. She wanted your dream to come true." Marcus felt the room spinning. "The lease agreement with Vesper Properties includes a termination clause," Reginald continued. "If my niece chooses, she can revoke your access to that land with 30 days' notice. You would need to relocate your entire server infrastructure." "That would cost millions," Bradford said faintly. "Approximately $47 million according to our estimates, more than Mr. Washington's current liquid assets." Judge Okonkwo was staring at the documents, shaking her head slowly. "Mr. Washington," she said, "is any of this true? Did your wife fund your company?" Marcus couldn't speak. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "I'll take that as a yes." The judge turned to Reginald. "Mr. Thornton Hayes, what exactly is your client seeking?" "Justice, Your Honor, nothing more." "Be specific." "My client is invoking the default clauses in all relevant contracts. This means Mr. Washington forfeits his controlling interest in equity now. He will be required to vacate the Atlanta property within 30 days, and he will repay the initial investment with interest approximately $2.4 million. "You're destroying me," Marcus whispered. Eleanor finally spoke. "No, Marcus, you destroyed yourself." Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't triumphant. It was tired. So tired. "I gave you everything. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. I believed in you when no one else did. I funded your dreams when every bank turned you down. I lived small, so you could feel big." She stood up. "Do you know what you gave me in return? You gave me a guest room because I didn't fit your aesthetic. You gave me hand-me-down shoes because you said nice things were wasted on me. You gave me 5 years of being called stupid, simple, a charity case. Ellie, don't." Her voice cracked like a whip. "You don't get to call me that anymore. You lost that right when you brought your mistress into my home." She walked toward him, slowly, deliberately. "I would have given you everything, Marcus. I would have stayed invisible forever if you had just loved me. That's all I wanted. Not your money I had more than you ever knew. Not your fame I ran from my own. I just wanted you to see me." She stopped right in front of him. "But you never did. You saw what you wanted to see. A simple woman you could control. A trophy that wouldn't challenge you." Marcus looked up at her. For the first time he really looked. And he saw her. Not the quiet nurse. Not the charity case. Not the simple wife. He saw Eleanor Victoria Thornton Hayes, heir to a fortune that dwarfed his own. A woman who had given up everything to test whether he could love without knowing the price tag. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I know." Eleanor's voice softened. "But sorry isn't enough anymore." She turned and walked back to her table. Judge Okonkwo cleared her throat. "We'll recess for 1 hour. Mr. Bradford, I suggest you use that time to advise your client on his options. They appear to be limited." The gavel came down. Marcus sat alone as the courtroom emptied. Bradford was already on his phone, probably calling the firm's malpractice insurance carrier. The junior associates had fled like rats from a sinking ship. Only destiny remained. She walked up behind him and put a hand on his shoulder. "Baby, what just happened?" Marcus shook off her hand. "Not now, Destiny." "But," I said, "not now." She stepped back, her face hardening. "Fine. Call me when you figure this out." She walked away without looking back. Marcus sat in the empty courtroom trying to think. There had to be an angle. There was always an angle. He'd grown up in Southeast DC, the roughest neighborhood in the city. He'd fought his way out. He'd survived. He would survive this too. His phone buzzed. A text from Devin Price, his CFO. "Heard what happened. Board is calling emergency meeting. They want you out." Marcus typed back furiously. "They can't do that. I'm the founder. You pledged 51% as collateral. If that clause gets enforced, you don't control anything. They're trying to save the company. Tell them to wait. I'll fix this." How Marcus didn't have an answer. Another text came through. This one from an unknown number. "Mr. Washington, we should talk. Meet me at the coffee shop across the street. 10 minutes. Who is this? Someone who can help you destroy Eleanor Thornton Hayes." Marcus stared at the message. His finger hovered over the delete button, but he didn't press it. He stood up and walked out of the courthouse. The coffee shop was nearly empty. A man sat in the back corner nursing a cup of something that definitely wasn't coffee. He was greasy, wearing a cheap leather jacket with nicotine-stained fingers. "Mr. Washington?" The man gestured to the seat across from him. "Sit." "Who are you?" "Name's Slater. I'm a private investigator, and I have information that could change everything." Marcus sat down slowly. "I'm listening." "Your wife, ex-wife, whatever she is, she's got secrets. Big ones." "Like what?" Slater slid a folder across the table. 6 years ago, she checked into a private clinic in Switzerland, spent 3 months there. Very hush-hush, very expensive. Marcus opened the folder. Medical records, psychiatric evaluations. Words like severe breakdown and extended observation jumped out at him. "What is this? This is leverage." Slater smiled, revealing yellowed teeth. "See if you can prove she's mentally unstable. Those contracts she signed might not hold up. Diminished capacity and all that. You're saying she's crazy. I'm saying she had some kind of episode 6 years ago, burned down a building from what my source says. Family covered it up, put her away to keep it quiet." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. It wasn't quite hope. It was darker than that. "How much do you want for this kit?" "10,000, cash." "I don't have 10,000 cash right now." "Then get it." Slater stood up. "You've got 24 hours. After that, I take this to TMZ and let them sort it out." He walked out, leaving Marcus alone with the folder. Marcus stared at the documents. This was wrong. He knew it was wrong. But what choice did he have? Eleanor was about to take everything from him. His company, his reputation, his future. He pulled out his phone and called Devin. "I need you to wire $10,000 to an account I'm going to give you, from the discretionary fund. Marcus, the board is freezing your access to company funds. Then use your personal account. I'll pay you back." A long pause. "What's this for?" "Insurance." "Marcus, whatever you're planning. Just do it, Devin. I'll explain later." He hung up. 23 hours later, Marcus met Slater again, this time in a parking garage. He handed over an envelope of cash, and Slater handed him a copy of the Swiss clinic records. "Pleasure doing business," Slater said. "Word of advice, don't go nuclear unless you have to. This stuff, it's gonna hurt her bad." "I know." "You sure you want to do that to someone who loved you?" Marcus looked at the folder in his hands. "She should have thought about that before she tried to destroy me." He walked back to his car, already planning his next move. He didn't notice the woman in the sedan parked 3 spaces away. Didn't see her lower her phone after snapping pictures of the exchange. Didn't recognize Destiny Brooks beneath the baseball cap and sunglasses. Destiny looked at the photos on her screen. Marcus handing over cash, receiving documents, doing something shady in a parking garage. She smiled to herself. "Insurance, baby," she whispered. "Always keep insurance." The next morning, Marcus's lawyers filed an emergency motion. New evidence, they claimed, material to the defendant's mental fitness. Bradford had refused to be part of it. He'd withdrawn from the case entirely, citing conflict of interest. His firm represented the Thornton Hayes Bank, and he couldn't ethically argue against them. Marcus had hired new lawyers, a scrappier firm, hungrier, less ethical. "We're going to argue diminished capacity," the new lawyer explained. His name was Todd Vickers, and he had the energy of a man who'd never met a line he wouldn't cross. "If we can prove Eleanor Thornton Hayes was mentally unfit when she signed those investment documents, the whole house of cards falls. And you can prove that. We've got her Swiss medical records. Something happened there, something bad. We're going to paint her as a wealthy lunatic who entrapped you in a marriage under false pretenses." Marcus felt sick, but he nodded anyway. "Do it." Judge Okonkwo read the emergency motion with a growing frown. When she finished, she looked at Marcus's legal team with something close to disgust. "You want to introduce psychiatric records from a Swiss clinic records that were allegedly obtained. How?" "Through standard investigative channels, Your Honor." "Let me be clear." The judge's voice was ice. "If these records were obtained illegally, if they violate medical privacy laws in any jurisdiction, I will not only throw them out, I will refer this matter to the district attorney." "We understand, Your Honor." "I doubt that." She turned to Reginald. "Mr. Thornton Hayes, does your client wish to respond?" Reginald stood slowly. He looked older today, tired, but his voice remained steady. "Your Honor, my client anticipated this attack. She is prepared to address it directly." "Meaning?" "Meaning she will tell you herself what happened in Switzerland. No sealed records, no legal maneuvering, just the truth." Marcus felt a flash of triumph. She was going to crack. She was going to... Eleanor stood. Her face was calm. Too calm. "Your Honor, 6 years ago, I was engaged to a man named Thomas Reed. We were in love. We were going to be married." Her voice didn't waver. "There was a fire at my family's summer home in the Berkshires. Thomas fell asleep with a cigarette burning. I woke up to smoke. I tried to pull him out." Now her voice cracked, just slightly. "I couldn't save him. I was burned over 40% of my body trying. I spent 3 months in that Swiss clinic having skin grafts and learning to walk again without screaming." The courtroom was silent. "The psychiatric evaluation Mr. Washington is trying to use against me was standard protocol for burn victims with PTSD. I had nightmares. I had flashbacks. I had survivor's guilt that made me want to die." She pulled something from her pocket. A photograph. "This is Thomas. This is the man I tried to save while my skin was melting off my back." She held up the photo. A young black man smiling with kind eyes. "Mr. Washington wants you to believe I'm crazy, that I entrapped him, that I'm unstable and dangerous." She turned to face Marcus directly. "But the truth is simpler than that. I survived something terrible. I ran away from my family because I couldn't bear their pity. I met Marcus in that clinic in Baltimore because I was volunteering there helping other burn survivors." Her eyes met his. "I fell in love with him because he saw me as normal, because he didn't know my scars, because for the first time in years, I felt like just a woman, not a tragedy." She set the photograph on the judge's bench. "That's my secret, Your Honor. That's what Mr. Washington paid some private investigator to dig up. The worst moment of my life, packaged and weaponized to hurt me." Judge Okonkwo looked at the photograph for a long moment. Then she looked at Marcus. "Mr. Washington," she said quietly, "is there anything you'd like to say?" Marcus opened his mouth, but for the first time in his life, he had no words. The silence in that courtroom was the loudest thing Marcus had ever heard. He stared at Eleanor, at the photograph she'd placed on the judge's bench, at the face of a dead man who had loved her before him. A man she'd tried to save while her body burned. 40% of her body. He thought of all the times she'd refused to undress in front of him. The oversized t-shirts she wore to bed. The way she flinched when he touched her back. He'd thought she was just modest, shy, simple. He'd never asked. "Mr. Washington." Judge Okonkwo's voice cut through the silence. "I asked if you had anything to say." Marcus looked at Todd Vickers, his new lawyer. Vickers was scribbling furiously on a legal pad, probably trying to find some angle, some way to spin this. But there was no spin for this. "I didn't know," Marcus finally said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. "She never told me." "Did you ask?" The judge's question was simple, but it landed like a hammer. "No. In 5 years of marriage, you never asked your wife about her past, her scars, her family. She said she was an only child, that her parents were gone, that she didn't like talking about it. And you didn't find that curious." Marcus wanted to defend himself, wanted to explain that he'd been building a company, that he'd been busy, that she seemed happy keeping things simple. But the excuses tasted like ash in his mouth. "No, Your Honor. I didn't find it curious. I found it convenient." The admission hung in the air. Eleanor sat back down slowly. Reginald placed a gentle hand on her arm. She was trembling slightly, the effort of sharing her story visible in the tight line of her shoulders. Judge Okonkwo removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. "Mr. Vickers, your emergency motion is denied. These medical records were obtained through questionable means, and more importantly, they prove nothing except that Mrs. Washington suffered a terrible trauma and sought appropriate medical care." "Your Honor, I'm not finished." The judge's voice sharpened. "Furthermore, I'm deeply troubled by the plaintiff's tactics in this proceeding. Using a woman's burn injuries and PTSD against her in a divorce case goes beyond aggressive litigation. It borders on cruel. We were simply trying to establish. You were trying to destroy her, and you failed." The judge put her glasses back on. "Court will recess until tomorrow morning at 9. At that time, I will hear final arguments on the contract enforcement claims. Mr. Washington, I strongly suggest you use this time to consider settlement options. Your position is not improving." The gavel came down. Marcus sat motionless as the courtroom emptied again. This time, even his lawyers left quickly, muttering about needing to reassess strategy. Eleanor walked past him without a word. Reginald followed his cane, tapping against the floor. At the door, Eleanor paused. "Marcus." He looked up. "The fire that killed Thomas. It wasn't just an accident." Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" "The cigarette lighter he used. It was defective, malfunctioned. The flame didn't go out when he closed it." "So?" Eleanor's eyes were cold. "The lighter was manufactured by a company called Washington Consumer Electronics. Your father's company, before it went bankrupt." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. "Thomas died because your father cut corners to save money. The valve that was supposed to extinguish the flame cost 12 cents to manufacture properly. Your father's company used a cheaper version that cost 3 cents. They saved 9 cents per unit and killed my fiancée." That can't be." "I didn't know it was your family's company when I met you. I found out 2 years into our marriage, by accident. I found old papers in your desk when I was organizing your home office." Marcus couldn't breathe. "That's why I stayed Marcus. Not just because I loved you. Because I wanted to see if you were different from him. If the son could be better than the father." She turned away. "Tomorrow you'll find out what happens when you prove you're exactly the same." She walked out. Marcus sat alone in the empty courtroom, his world crumbling around him. His phone buzzed. Devon again. Board voted. "You're suspended as CEO pending audit. Don't come to the office." He didn't respond. Another text. This one from his mother. "Baby, I saw the news. Call me. Please." He couldn't face her. Couldn't explain how her son, who she'd sacrificed everything to raise, had become this person. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Marcus. It's Destiny. We need to talk. Now. He almost ignored it, but something in the message felt urgent. Where my apartment? Come alone. He drove to Destiny's place in a daze. The drive that usually took 20 minutes took an hour in traffic, giving him too much time to think. Thomas Reed. Killed by a defective lighter. Made by his father's company. Eleanor had known. She'd known for 3 years and never said a word. She'd stayed with him, watched him, waited to see if he would prove himself worthy. And what had he done? He'd cheated on her, mocked her, thrown her out like garbage. Destiny's apartment was in a high-rise in Chelsea. Marcus rode the elevator up in silence, still trying to process everything. She opened the door before he could knock. Get in, quick! She pulled him inside and locked the door behind them. What's going on? Destiny's usual confidence was gone. She looked scared. Genuinely scared. I messed up, Marcus. Bad. What did you do? She handed him her phone. On the screen was a text conversation with the Thornton Hayes lawyers. They reached out to me yesterday, offered me immunity if I cooperate. Full immunity plus $2 million. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Immunity from what? From prosecution. Marcus, they're building a criminal case against you. Criminal? For what? Destiny pulled out a folder. Inside were documents, spreadsheets, emails. For this. Marcus recognized the documents. They were internal Equity Now files. Specifically, they were from the drone project, the medical delivery drones that were supposed to be the company's next big product. Where did you get these? I'm VP of Marketing. Remember, I have access to everything. And when things started going south, I made copies. Insurance. Marcus flipped through the pages. Technical specifications. Safety reports. Cost analysis. And then he saw it. A memo from Devon Price to Marcus. Dated 18 months ago. Navigation sensors failing at 3% rate in heavy rain. Engineering recommends upgrading to military-grade LiDAR. Cost increase $200 per unit. Recommendation proceed with current sensors to maintain profit margins for Q3 projections. At the bottom was Marcus's response. Approved. Ship it. His own words, his own signature. 3% failure rate, Destiny said quietly. Do you know what that means? If you ship 10,000 drones, 300 of them are going to fall out of the sky in bad weather. 300 drones weighing 60 pounds each falling on people's heads. We were going to fix it in the next version. There is no next version, Marcus. The first batch shipped 3 months ago, and the Thornton Hayes lawyers? They're saying one of those drones already malfunctioned, crashed through a skylight at a nursing home in Florida. Didn't kill anyone, but it easily could have. Marcus sat down heavily. His legs wouldn't hold him anymore. They're saying it's criminal negligence. Maybe worse. They're saying you knowingly approved a defective product to meet earnings projections. I didn't know it would actually fail. You knew there was a 3% chance it would fail, and you shipped it anyway. Destiny's voice cracked. I was there when Devon brought you that report. I watched you read it and sign off on it without even hesitating. Why are you telling me this? Why didn't you just take their deal? Destiny's face twisted into something complicated. Pain, guilt, maybe even regret. Because I loved you, you idiot. I actually thought we were going to be something. I thought once you got rid of Eleanor, we'd build an empire together. She laughed bitterly. But you don't love anything. Do you, Marcus? You don't love me. You didn't love Eleanor. You just love winning. You love the game. Destiny. I'm taking their deal. I'm testifying against you. But I wanted to give you a chance to run first. Consider it a parting gift. Marcus stared at her. Run where? I don't know. Mexico, the Caymans, somewhere without extradition. She shrugged. You've got about 48 hours before they issue a warrant. After that, it's over. And if I don't run, then you're going to prison, Marcus, for a long time. She opened the door. Now get out. I've got lawyers coming in an hour to finalize my cooperation agreement. Marcus walked to the door. He stopped at the threshold. Did you ever actually care about me? Destiny looked at him for a long moment. I cared about who I thought you were. Turns out that guy didn't exist. She closed the door in his face. Marcus drove aimlessly through the city. His mind was racing, but his thoughts couldn't settle on anything coherent. Run. That was Destiny's advice. Take whatever money he could scrape together and disappear. But where would he go? What would he do? He'd spent his entire life building toward this moment, toward being somebody. And now, it was all falling apart. His phone rang. The screen showed a number he didn't recognize. He answered anyway. Mr. Washington. Who is this? My name is Agent Reeves, Federal Bureau of Investigation. We'd like you to come in for a conversation. Marcus's blood ran cold. Am I under arrest? Not yet, but I strongly recommend you cooperate. Things will go much easier for you if you do. I want my lawyer present. Of course. When can we expect you? Marcus hung up without answering. He pulled over to the side of the road, his hands shaking too badly to drive. Everything was closing in. The FBI, the lawsuits, the criminal charges, and underneath it all, the truth he'd been avoiding. He was his father's son. His father had cut corners on safety to make money. Marcus had done the same thing. His father had destroyed lives with his greed. Marcus was doing the same thing. Eleanor had given him 5 years to prove he was different. He'd proven exactly the opposite. His phone rang again. This time, it was his mother. Marcus Jerome Washington, you answer this phone right now. Hey, Mama. Don't hey mama me. What is going on? I'm seeing your face all over the news. They're saying you stole from your wife, that she's some kind of heiress. It's complicated. Then, uncomplicated. Tell me what's happening with my son. Marcus closed his eyes. His mother was 72 years old. She'd worked 3 jobs to put him through school. She'd celebrated every success, defended him against every criticism. She deserved the truth. I messed up, Mama. Bad. How bad? Prison bad. Maybe federal prison. The silence on the line was worse than any words. What did you do? I approved a product I knew wasn't safe. To make money. People could have gotten hurt. People might still get hurt. Lord have mercy. His mother's voice was a whisper. Marcus, how could you? I don't know, Mama. I thought if I just kept winning it wouldn't matter. I thought I could fix everything later. That's not how it works, baby. You know that's not how it works. I know. Your father. Her voice trailed off. I know, Mama. I'm just like him. No. Her voice hardened. Don't you dare say that. Your father never acknowledged what he did. He died pretending he was innocent. You're not like him, Marcus. Not yet. What do I do? You tell the truth. You face what you did. You take whatever punishment comes and you try to make it right. I could go to prison for years. And you should if that's what justice requires. I didn't raise you to run from consequences, Marcus. I raised you to be a man. So be one. Marcus felt tears building behind his eyes. He hadn't cried since he was 12 years old. I'm scared, Mama. I know, baby. But scared is better than sorry. Scared means you still have a conscience. Now you call that FBI agent back and you tell him you're coming in. And you tell the truth, Marcus. The whole truth. Yes, ma'am. I love you, son. No matter what. I love you too, Mama. He hung up the phone. For a long moment, he just sat there watching the traffic flow past, watching the city that had been his kingdom slowly close in around him. Then he picked up his phone and dialed. Agent Reeves, this is Marcus Washington. I'm ready to talk. The FBI field office was cold and institutional. Marcus sat in an interrogation room that looked exactly like the ones on TV cop shows. Gray walls, metal table, two-way mirror. Agent Reeves sat across from him. She was a black woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. "Your lawyer is on his way. You can wait if you prefer." "No, I want to talk now." Reeves raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She turned on a recorder. "This is Special Agent Catherine Reeves interviewing Marcus Jerome Washington on the date of..." She stated the date for the record. "Mr. Washington, you understand you have the right to remain silent." "Yes." "And you're choosing to speak anyway?" "Yes." "Why?" Marcus took a deep breath. "Because I'm tired of lying. I've been lying for so long I forgot what the truth felt like, and I don't want to be my father." Reeves leaned forward slightly. "Tell me about the drones, Mr. Washington." So he did. He told her everything. The safety reports, the cost-cutting, the decision to ship a product he knew was dangerous. He told her about Devon's memo and his own approval. He told her about the shell companies and the creative accounting, about the investors he'd misled and the regulators he'd evaded. He told her about Eleanor, about the money she'd given him, about the land she'd bought, about the 5 years she'd spent watching him, waiting for him to be someone worth loving. When he finished, Agent Reeves just looked at him. "That's quite a confession." "It's the truth. You understand this will likely result in criminal charges, federal charges, multiple counts." "I understand." "Why are you doing this? You could have run. You could have fought it in court." Marcus thought about the question, really thought about it. "Because my wife gave me 5 years to prove I was a good man, and I failed, but maybe I can still prove I'm not a complete monster. Maybe I can still prove I'm worth something. By confessing, by taking responsibility, by facing what I did instead of hiding from it." Reeves studied him for a long moment. "You know, in 15 years with the Bureau, I've never had someone come in and confess like this. Usually we have to drag every admission out of them. I'm tired of dragging Agent Reeves. I'm tired of fighting to preserve a lie." The door opened. A man in an expensive suit walked in looking furious. "This interview is over. I'm Harold Finch, Mr. Washington's attorney, and anything he said without me present is inadmissible." "He waived his right to counsel," Reeves said calmly. "He can't do that. He's clearly under duress." "Harold." Marcus's voice was quiet, but firm. "I fired you." "What?" "You heard me. I don't need a lawyer anymore. I'm pleading guilty." The attorney's mouth fell open. "You can't be serious. We can fight this. We can..." "I'm done fighting. Now please leave." Harold looked at Marcus like he'd lost his mind. Then he shook his head and walked out, already dialing someone on his phone. Reeves waited until the door closed. "You sure about this?" "More sure than I've been about anything in years." "There's one more thing you should know." Reeves pulled out a folder. "We've been investigating the original lighter that killed Thomas Reed, the one manufactured by your father's company." Marcus felt his stomach clench. "The statute of limitations has passed for most charges, but there's evidence your father knew about the defect and covered it up. Evidence that would have been relevant in the civil suit that Eleanor's family filed years ago." "What kind of evidence?" Reeves slid a document across the table. It was an internal memo. From Marcus Washington Sr. to his VP of Manufacturing, dated 3 months before Thomas Reed died. "Defect rate on ignition valves is now at 4%. Engineering wants a recall. Deny the request. We can't afford the PR hit. If anyone dies, we'll settle quietly." Marcus read his father's words, his father's decision, his father's willingness to let people die to protect the bottom line. "Where did you get this anonymous tip sent to our office 2 days ago?" "From who?" Reeves almost smiled. "I think you know." "Eleanor." She'd found this document somewhere. Maybe in the same place she'd found the connection between his father's company and Thomas's death. And she'd sent it to the FBI. Not to destroy Marcus, to give him a choice. He could follow in his father's footsteps, or he could break the chain. Marcus looked at the memo for a long time. Then he looked up at Agent Reeves. "What do you need me to do?" Agent Reeves slid a second folder across the table. "We need you to wear a wire." Marcus stared at her. "A wire for what?" "Devon Price, your CFO. He's been running a parallel scheme you don't even know about. Embezzlement, money laundering through offshore accounts. He's been using equity now as his personal piggy bank for 3 years." "Devon? That's impossible. He's my best friend. We've known each other since college." "Then you won't mind helping us catch him?" Marcus felt the last pieces of his world cracking apart. Devon. The man who'd stood beside him at his wedding. The man who'd helped him build equity now from nothing. The man he'd trusted with everything. What exactly has he been doing? Reeves opened the folder. Bank statements. Wire transfers. Shell companies in the Cayman Islands. Approximately $14 million has been siphoned from equity now over the past 3 years. Devon Price's signature is on every transfer, but here's the interesting part. She pulled out another document. He's been doing it in your name, using your digital signature. If this goes to trial, it looks like you authorized every transaction. Marcus's blood ran cold. He framed me. He covered his tracks, same difference. But why? He's already wealthy. I gave him 15% equity. Gambling debts, online poker. He's in deep to some very dangerous people. Reeves leaned forward. Devon Price isn't just your friend, Mr. Washington. He's the reason this investigation started in the first place. We've been watching him for months. You were just collateral discovery. Marcus laughed bitterly. So I'm not even the main event. I'm a footnote in my own destruction. You're an opportunity. Help us get Devon on tape, admitting to the embezzlement, and the district attorney is willing to discuss reduced charges. Maybe even probation instead of prison time. And if I don't, then you take the fall for everything. Devon walks, and you go to federal prison for 15 to 20 years. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. When do we do this? Reeves smiled grimly. Tonight. The wire was uncomfortable. A tiny device taped to Marcus's chest hidden beneath his shirt. The FBI had prepped him for an hour running through scenarios, giving him questions to ask, phrases to use that would trigger specific admissions. Remember, Agent Reeves said before he left, we need him to admit he authorized the transfers without your knowledge. We need him to say the money went to his personal accounts. Anything less, and the recording is useless. I understand. And Marcus, don't be a hero. Get what we need and get out. Devon might seem like your friend, but cornered animals are dangerous. Marcus drove to Devon's apartment. His hands were sweating on the steering wheel. His heart was pounding so hard he was sure the wire would pick it up. Devon buzzed him up without hesitation. Marcus, man, I've been trying to reach you all day. What the hell is going on? The board is freaking out. The lawyers are... We need to talk. Devon's smile faltered slightly. Okay, sure, come in. The apartment was exactly what Marcus expected. Expensive. Tasteful. Paid for with stolen money. Drink, Devon offered. No, I just came from the FBI field office. Devon's face went pale. They know everything, Devon. The offshore accounts, the wire transfers, the 14 million. Marcus, whatever they told you. They showed me the documents, your signature, your authorization codes, everything. Devon's composure cracked. Just for a moment. Then he recovered, sliding into the smooth confidence that had always defined him. Okay, look, I can explain. Then explain. Devon poured himself a drink with shaking hands. It started small. I had some debts, personal stuff. I thought I could borrow from the company and pay it back before anyone noticed. But then the debts got bigger, and the payments got harder, and... He trailed off. And you kept taking. I was going to pay it back every cent. Once we went public, my shares would have been worth 50 million. I could have covered everything, and no one would have known. Except you used my signature. You made it look like I authorized everything. Devon's eyes flickered. Something shifted in his expression. I had to protect myself, Marcus. You understand that, right? If things went wrong, I needed a backup plan. A backup plan that puts me in prison for 20 years. It wasn't supposed to go that far. The IPO was supposed to save everything. But then your wife turned out to be some kind of secret billionaire and the whole thing fell apart. Don't blame Eleanor for this. You did this. You stole that money. You framed me. Devon slammed his glass down on the counter. Don't act so righteous, Marcus. You're not innocent. You approved those faulty drones. You lied to investors. You cut corners on safety to make your quarterly numbers look good. We're the same, you and me. We just got caught at different things. We're not the same. I'm here. I'm facing what I did. You're still trying to wriggle out of it. Devon laughed. It was an ugly sound. Facing what you did? Please. You're wearing a wire right now, aren't you? Marcus froze. Don't look so surprised. I've known the FBI was watching me for months. I've got people inside. The second you walked in here, I knew what this was. Devon reached into his jacket pocket. Marcus tensed, expecting a gun. Instead, Devon pulled out a phone. I've been recording too, Marcus. Everything you just said. Your admission about the drones. Your confession about the safety reports. I've got enough on this phone to bury you 10 times over. What do you want? I want out. I want a plane ticket to a country without extradition. And I want you to tell the FBI that I wasn't involved in any of this. That the offshore accounts were your idea. That you used my identity to cover your tracks. You want me to take the fall for your crimes too. I want you to be the friend you always said you were. Devon's voice turned cold. Or I release this recording to every news outlet in America. By tomorrow morning, you won't just be the man who stole his wife's money. You'll be the man who knowingly endangered lives for profit. Your mother will see it. Your fans will see it. Everyone who ever believed in you will know exactly what kind of person you really are. Marcus stood perfectly still. He thought about his mother's words. Tell the truth. Face the consequences. He thought about Eleanor watching him for 5 years, waiting for him to prove he was different. He thought about Thomas Reed dead because Marcus's father valued profit over people. No. Devon's eyes narrowed. No. I'm done running Devon. I'm done lying. I'm done being the kind of man who saves himself by destroying others. You're making a mistake. Maybe. But at least it'll be my mistake, not my father's, not yours, mine. Devon shook his head slowly. Then you're a fool. And you're going to prison for a very long time. Probably. But I'll sleep better than you. Marcus turned toward the door. Marcus. He stopped. I really was your friend once. Before all of this. Before the money changed everything. Marcus looked back at the man he'd trusted for 15 years. I know. That's the saddest part. He walked out. The FBI agents were waiting in the hallway. They'd heard everything through the wire. We got it, Agent Reeves said. His admission about the offshore accounts. His attempt to blackmail you. It's enough. What happens now? Now we arrest Devon Price, and you keep your end of the deal. Meaning tomorrow morning you stand in front of Judge Okonkwo and you tell her everything. About the drones, about the safety reports, about all of it. And then you accept whatever punishment she decides. Marcus nodded slowly. One more thing. Reeves handed him a piece of paper. This was delivered to our office an hour ago, from Eleanor Thornton Hayes. Marcus unfolded the paper. It was handwritten. Marcus, I heard you went to the FBI voluntarily. I heard you confessed. I didn't expect that. I spent 5 years waiting for you to prove you were different from your father. I'd given up hope. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe some part of the man I fell in love with was real after all. I'm not forgiving you. What you did to me, to us, to those people who could have been hurt by your drones that can't be erased with one confession. But I want you to know that I see you trying. I see you fighting to be better. And that matters. Tomorrow after the hearing, I'm going to ask the judge for mercy. Not because you deserve it, but because I want to believe that people can change. I want to believe that redemption is possible. Maybe I need to believe it for myself, too. E. Marcus read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his pocket. Agent Reeves. Yes. Thank you. For giving me a chance to do the right thing. Don't thank me yet. Tomorrow is going to be hard. I know. But hard is better than wrong. The next morning, Marcus stood before Judge Patricia Okonkwo for the last time. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled every available seat. Cameras weren't allowed, but artists sat in the gallery sketching the scene for the evening news. Eleanor was there, seated behind her uncle. She wore the same cream suit from the first hearing. She looked calm, composed, like a woman who had finally laid down a burden she'd been carrying for far too long. Devin Price was there too, seated in the back row, flanked by federal marshals. His face was blank, but his eyes burned with hatred when they met Marcus's. Judge Okonkwo called the court to order. We are here for final sentencing in the matter of Washington v. Washington, and to address the criminal referrals that have arisen from this proceeding. Mr. Washington, do you have a statement before I deliver my ruling? Marcus stood. His lawyer, a new one, a public defender who'd volunteered for the case, tried to hold him back. Marcus, let me handle this. No. I need to say this myself. He walked to the front of the courtroom. Your Honor, 5 years ago, I met a woman in a free clinic in Baltimore. She was wearing scrubs with a coffee stain on them. She was helping a homeless man with his medication. She was kind and gentle, and she didn't know who I was or what I was worth. He paused. I thought I was the lucky one. I thought I'd found someone who loved me, not for my money or my fame. But I was wrong. She wasn't the lucky one, and neither was I. She was testing me, giving me every chance to prove I was a good man. He looked at Eleanor. I failed. I failed every test she gave me. I took her money and pretended I earned it myself. I took her love and gave her cruelty in return. I took her trust and shattered it with infidelity and contempt. He turned back to the judge. But my crimes go deeper than that. I approved products I knew were dangerous. I lied to investors. I covered up safety failures to make my quarterly numbers look good. People could have died because of my decisions. And I didn't care. Because I was too busy being successful to worry about being good. The courtroom was silent. My father was the same way. He cut corners on safety to save money, and a young man named Thomas Reed died because of it. I spent my whole life trying to be different from him, trying to prove I was better. But when the moment came when I had to choose between profit and people, I made the same choice he did. Marcus's voice cracked. I can't undo what I've done. I can't bring back the man my father killed. I can't give Eleanor back the years she wasted on me. I can't unship the drones or unfile the false reports. He straightened his shoulders. But I can tell the truth. I can face the consequences. I can try for once in my life to be the man my mother raised me to be. He turned to Eleanor. I'm sorry. Those words are worthless, I know. But I need to say them. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to be good. I'm sorry I wasted your hope. I'm sorry I proved you right about everything. Eleanor's eyes were bright with tears she refused to let fall. And I want you to know something. Marcus's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but the microphone carried it to every corner of the room. The man you married wasn't completely a lie. There was a moment early on when I thought I could be different, when I thought your love might actually make me better. I lost that man somewhere along the way. But he was real once, and I'm sorry I killed him. He turned back to Judge Okonkwo. I'm ready for your ruling, Your Honor. Whatever it is, I accept it." The judge looked at him for a long moment. "Mr. Washington, in 30 years on the bench, I have never heard a statement quite like that. Most defendants come before me with excuses, with justifications, with lawyers explaining why their clients shouldn't face consequences for their actions." She removed her glasses. "You came with the truth. Raw and painful and ugly, but the truth nonetheless." She opened a folder on her desk. "On the civil matters, the prenuptial agreement is enforced as written. Mrs. Washington retains all assets that came from her family, including the initial investment in Equity Now and the Atlanta property. The controlling interest in Equity Now reverts to the plaintiff under the default clause of the loan agreement." Marcus nodded. He'd expected that. "On the criminal referrals, the district attorney has agreed to reduce charges in light of your cooperation with the investigation of Devon Price and your voluntary confession. Instead of 20 years for fraud and criminal negligence, you face a maximum of 5 years." The courtroom buzzed with whispers. "However," the judge's voice sharpened, "the reduced charges do not mean reduced accountability. You endangered lives, Mr. Washington. You prioritized profit over people. That cannot go unpunished." She put her glasses back on. "I hereby sentence you to 3 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. You will also pay restitution to Equity Now shareholders and fund a victim's compensation account for anyone injured by your defective products." 3 years. Marcus let the number sink in. "Additionally, I am issuing a court order requiring you to establish a foundation dedicated to corporate accountability and safety standards. You will fund this foundation with your remaining personal assets. If you emerge from prison with nothing but the clothes on your back, that will be appropriate." "Yes, Your Honor." "One final matter." The judge looked past Marcus to where Eleanor sat. "Mrs. Washington has filed a petition requesting mercy in your sentencing. I have considered this petition carefully." Eleanor stood slowly. "Mrs. Washington, do you wish to address the court?" Eleanor walked forward. She stood beside Marcus close enough that he could smell her perfume, the same subtle scent she'd worn on their first date. "Your Honor, Marcus Washington hurt me in ways I'm still discovering. He took my money, my trust, my hope. He made me believe I was worthless while spending my inheritance to fund his ego." Her voice was steady, but Marcus could see her hands trembling slightly. "But he also taught me something important. He taught me that I was looking for redemption in the wrong place. I thought if I could make him good, it would prove that I was worth loving, that I wasn't broken by what happened to Thomas." She took a breath. "I was wrong. I can't fix anyone but myself, and Marcus can't be fixed by my forgiveness or my mercy." She turned to look at him. "But I'm asking for mercy anyway, not because he deserves it, but because holding on to hate is destroying me. And I refuse to let him take anything else from me, not even my peace." She turned back to the judge. "I'm asking you to give him a chance to be better. A real chance, not probation, not freedom. He needs to face consequences for what he did. But maybe when he comes out, he can actually become the man he pretended to be." Judge Okonkwo considered this for a long moment. "Mrs. Washington, your grace in this matter is remarkable. I will take your petition under advisement." She looked at Marcus. "Mr. Washington, you have 3 days to settle your affairs before you report to federal custody. Use that time wisely." The gavel came down. Court was adjourned. Marcus stood frozen as the courtroom erupted around him. Reporters shouted questions. Lawyers conferred in urgent whispers. Devon Price was led away in handcuffs, still glaring at Marcus with murderous eyes. But Marcus wasn't watching any of that. He was watching Eleanor walk away. "Eleanor." She stopped at the courtroom doors. "Thank you for asking for mercy. You didn't have to do that." She turned to face him. Her eyes were dry now, clear. "I didn't do it for you, Marcus. I did it for me, so I could finally let go. I know, but still, thank you." She studied his face for a long moment, looking for something. Maybe finding it, maybe not. Goodbye, Marcus. She walked out of the courtroom and out of his life. 3 days later, Marcus surrendered himself to federal custody. His mother was there to see him off. She held him for a long time, not crying, just holding on. You're going to be okay, baby. 3 years isn't forever. I know, Mama. And when you get out, you're going to build something good, something honest. I raised you better than this, and you're going to prove it. Yes, ma'am. She cupped his face in her hands. I love you, Marcus. Nothing you did changes that. Nothing ever could. I love you too, Mama. He hugged her one last time. Then he walked through the prison gates. The door closed behind him with a heavy clang. The sound of consequences finally catching up the sound of a man choosing accountability over escape. The sound of the end of one story and the beginning of another. 2 years, 7 months, and 14 days. That's how long Marcus Washington spent counting ceiling tiles in his cell at Fairfield Federal Correctional Institution. 2 years of cafeteria food and mandatory lights out. 2 years of group therapy sessions and vocational training. 2 years of letters from his mother every Sunday, each one ending with the same words, I'm proud of you for facing this baby, keep going. He kept going. The first 6 months were the hardest. The other inmates knew who he was. The tech billionaire brought low by his own wife. The man who thought he was untouchable until the judge read her last name aloud. Some of them laughed at him. Some of them wanted to test him. Most of them just watched, waiting to see what kind of man he really was. Marcus didn't fight, didn't posture, didn't try to buy his way into protection or favor. He worked. Kitchen duty at first, then the library, then the education program, where he taught basic computer skills to inmates preparing for release. Why are you helping us? A young man named Jerome asked him once. Jerome was 22, serving 5 years for wire fraud. Smart kid. Reminded Marcus of himself at that age. Because someone gave me a chance once, and I wasted it. Maybe you won't. Jerome didn't say anything, but he started showing up early to every class. At night, Marcus wrote. Not letters he had no one to write to except his mother. He wrote plans, business ideas, ways to use technology to help people, instead of exploit them. Ways to make the foundation. Judge Okonkwo had ordered him to create into something real, something that mattered. He wrote about Eleanor too. Not to her, just about her. Trying to understand what she'd seen in him that made her stay for 5 years. Trying to understand what he'd destroyed. He never found the answer. In his 2nd year, a letter arrived that wasn't from his mother. The return address was a law firm he didn't recognize. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Mr. Washington, Devon Price, died last night in custody. Heart attack. He was 41 years old. I thought you should know. Regards, Agent Catherine Reeves. Marcus read the letter 3 times. Devon. Dead. The man who'd betrayed him, framed him, tried to destroy him. Gone. He waited to feel something. Satisfaction. Vindication. Relief. Instead, he felt hollow. Devon had been his friend once. Before the money. Before the lies. They'd eaten ramen noodles together in a cramped apartment, dreaming about the company they'd build. They'd celebrated the first investor check by buying each other cheap watches they couldn't afford. Somewhere along the way, they'd both lost themselves, but only one of them had found the way back. Marcus folded the letter and put it in his drawer. He never looked at it again. The day Marcus was released came sooner than he expected. Good behavior. Early parole. His mother was waiting at the gate. Look at you. She cupped his face in her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. You look older. I am older, Mama. Wiser too, I hope. I'm trying. She drove him to a small apartment in Brooklyn. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, second-hand furniture, a view of a brick wall. His mother had set it up using the small amount of money the court had allowed him to keep. "It's not much," she said apologetically. "It's perfect." Marcus spent his first week of freedom doing simple things: grocery shopping, walking in the park, sitting in coffee shops and watching people live their lives. He'd forgotten how noisy the world was, how fast everyone moved. He felt like a ghost drifting through a city that had forgotten him. Then he got a phone call. "Mr. Washington, this is Margaret Chen, from Thornton Hayes and Associates." Marcus nearly dropped the phone. "I know who you are. Mrs. Thornton Hayes would like to meet with you, tomorrow, if you're available." "Eleanor? She wants to see me. She has something to discuss. I'm not at liberty to say more. Will you come?" Marcus's heart was pounding. He hadn't seen Eleanor since the courtroom, hadn't heard from her. He'd assumed she'd moved on, built a new life, forgotten he ever existed. "Where is Central Park? The Bethesda Fountain, 2 o'clock. I'll be there." He didn't sleep that night. The next afternoon, Marcus arrived at the fountain 20 minutes early. He was wearing the only decent clothes he owned. Khakis, a button-down shirt his mother had ironed for him, shoes that were slightly too tight. He waited. At exactly 2 o'clock, he saw her. Eleanor walked toward him along the tree-lined path. She looked different. The same, but different. She'd cut her hair shorter. She moved with a confidence that hadn't been there before, a certainty in her own skin. She was beautiful. She'd always been beautiful. But now she looked free. "Marcus?" "Eleanor." They stood facing each other, two strangers who had once shared a life. "You look good," Eleanor said. "I look broke." He tried to smile. It felt strange on his face. "Broke looks good on you, better than rich did." She gestured to a nearby bench. They sat a careful distance between them. "I didn't expect to hear from you," Marcus said. "I didn't expect to reach out, but something happened, something I need to tell you in person." Marcus felt his stomach clench. "What?" Eleanor pulled out an envelope and handed it to him. "Open it." Inside was a photograph, a young boy maybe 7 or 8 years old. Dark skin, bright eyes, a smile that seemed to light up the frame. Marcus frowned. "Who is this?" "His name is Thomas. Thomas Reed Jr." The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. "He's the son of the man who died in the fire." "Yes, Thomas's son. I didn't know about him until last year. Thomas and we were engaged, but we never married. His son was born 6 months after he died, to another woman, someone he'd been with before me." Marcus stared at the photograph. "Why are you showing me this?" Eleanor took a breath. "Because for the past year I've been trying to track down everyone affected by your father's company, the families of people who were hurt or killed by those defective lighters. I've been setting up trust funds, paying for education, medical bills, whatever they need." That's incredible, Eleanor." "It's not enough. It can never be enough. But it's something." She paused. "Thomas Jr. is 10 now. He lives with his grandmother in Philadelphia. His mother passed away when he was 3, breast cancer." "I'm sorry." "He's a good kid, smart, loves science, wants to be an engineer someday." Eleanor's voice softened. "He reminds me of you, actually, the you I thought I married." Marcus didn't know what to say. "I've been funding his education. His grandmother didn't want to accept the money at first, but I convinced her it was the right thing." "That's generous of you." "It's not generosity. It's obligation." Eleanor met his eyes. "But there's something else, something that requires your involvement." "What?" "The foundation. The one the court ordered you to create. You haven't done anything with it yet." Marcus looked down. "I just got out. I don't have any money. I don't have any resources. I don't even have a job." "I know." Eleanor reached into her bag and pulled out a thick folder. "That's why I'm giving you these." Marcus opened the folder. Inside were legal documents, financial statements, organizational charts. "What is this?" It's a fully funded foundation. $20 million in seed capital. A board of directors already assembled. Office space in Manhattan. Staff hired and ready to work. Marcus's hands were shaking. Eleanor, I can't. Yes, you can. And you will. Her voice was firm. This is your chance, Marcus. Your real chance. Not to make money, not to be famous, to actually do something good. Why? Why would you do this for me after everything? Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. Do you remember what you said in court about the man you might have been? Yes. I've been thinking about that for 3 years, wondering if I was wrong about you, wondering if I gave up too soon. She looked out at the fountain at the water catching the afternoon light. I don't think I was wrong. The man you were. He was never going to change. He was too invested in being right, being successful, being on top. She turned back to face him. But maybe the man you're becoming is different. Maybe prison changed you. Maybe hitting bottom taught you something. I don't know. So this is a test. This is an opportunity. What you do with it is up to you. Marcus looked at the folder in his hands. $20 million. A chance to build something real. A chance to prove he wasn't his father. I don't deserve this. No, you don't. But Thomas Jr. deserves to know that something good came out of his father's death. And I deserve to know if I was completely wrong about you. She stood up. The foundation is called the Reed Washington Initiative, named for Thomas and for you. The board meets next Monday at 9. Be there. She started to walk away. Eleanor? She stopped. Thank you. I know those words are worthless, but I don't have anything else to give. Eleanor looked back at him. Then give me something worth more than words. Give me proof that people can change, that redemption is possible, that the 5 years I spent hoping weren't completely wasted. She walked away. Marcus sat on the bench for a long time, holding the folder, watching the fountain. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed his mother. Mama, I need to talk to you. Something happened. Good something or bad something? Marcus looked at the folder again. I think it might be good. 1 year later, the Reed Washington Initiative had grown beyond anything Marcus had imagined. What started as a small foundation focused on corporate accountability had expanded into a nationwide movement. They'd lobbied for stricter safety standards. They'd funded whistleblower protection programs. They'd created a hotline for employees to report dangerous practices without fear of retaliation. Marcus worked 18-hour days. He took no salary. He lived in the same small Brooklyn apartment, rode the subway to work, ate lunch at his desk. He was happier than he'd ever been. Mr. Washington, his assistant, a young woman named Grace, knocked on his door. There's someone here to see you. I don't have any appointments. She says she doesn't need one. Marcus looked up. Eleanor stood in the doorway. She looked different again. Lighter somehow, like something heavy had finally been lifted from her shoulders. Can we talk? Marcus nodded to Grace, who quietly closed the door behind Eleanor. I've been watching the news, Eleanor said, sitting across from him. The Senate hearings on corporate safety. That was you, wasn't it, behind the scenes? I just provided information. The senators did the rest. Modest. That's new. I've learned that taking credit isn't as important as getting things done. Eleanor smiled. It was a real smile. The first one he'd seen from her in years. I've also been following Thomas Jr. His grandmother sends me updates. He got accepted to a STEM program at UPenn. I know. I wrote him a recommendation letter. You did? He asked me to. We've been corresponding. Emails mostly. He wanted to know about his father. I couldn't tell him much, but I told him what kind of man Thomas must have been based on the woman who loved him. Eleanor's eyes glistened. That was kind of you. It was honest. Thomas Reed must have been extraordinary to earn your love. They sat in silence for a moment. I came here for a reason, Eleanor finally said. Not just to check on the foundation. What reason? She reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet box. Marcus's heart stopped. Before you say anything, this isn't what you think. She opened the box. Inside was a gold pin, simple, elegant, shaped like a rose. This was my grandmother's, Eleanor said. She gave it to me when I turned 21. She told me to give it to someone who deserved it. Someone who had proven themselves worthy of the family legacy. Eleanor. I'm not saying I forgive you, Marcus. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive you. What you did, it left scars that won't ever fully heal. She placed the box on his desk. But I see what you're doing here. I see the man you're trying to become. And my grandmother always said that trying was the beginning of deserving. Marcus stared at the pin. I can't accept this. You can, and you will. Her voice carried an echo of the steel that had been there in the courtroom. This pin isn't forgiveness. It's not absolution. It's recognition of progress, of effort, of the possibility that people can change. She stood up. Wear it when you testify before Congress next month. Wear it when you meet with victims' families. Wear it as a reminder of what you're fighting for. What am I fighting for? Eleanor walked to the door. She paused her hand on the frame. You're fighting to prove that your last name doesn't have to be a curse, that the sins of the father don't have to become the sins of the son. She looked back at him. You're fighting for redemption, Marcus. Your own and everyone else who's ever been told they were too broken to fix. She opened the door. Don't let me down. She was gone. Marcus sat alone in his office holding the velvet box. The pin was warm in his palm, warm like hope, warm like second chances. He pinned it to his lapel. Then he went back to work. 6 months after that, Marcus stood before a packed auditorium. The National Conference on Corporate Ethics had invited him to give the keynote address. 2,000 people in the audience. CEOs, regulators, journalists, activists. He was terrified. 3 years ago, Marcus began his voice steady despite the trembling in his hands. I stood in a courtroom and watched my world fall apart. I lost my company. I lost my fortune. I lost my wife. And I deserved to lose all of it. The audience was silent. I was the kind of businessman we all pretend doesn't exist, the kind who cuts corners, who prioritizes profit over people, who lies to himself so thoroughly that he starts to believe his own propaganda. He paused. I thought I was special. I thought the rules didn't apply to me. I thought I could take and take and take, and somehow the universe would never ask for payment. His eyes found Eleanor in the third row. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. I was wrong. The universe always collects. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually the bill comes due. He took a breath. I'm here today not as a success story. I'm not here to tell you how I rebuilt my empire or reclaimed my fortune. I'm here as a cautionary tale. A living example of what happens when you forget that business is ultimately about people, real people, people who can be hurt by your decisions. Some of you know my story. You know that my wife turned out to be an heiress who had funded my entire company without my knowledge. You know that she exposed my fraud and my negligence. What you might not know is why she did it. Marcus's voice softened. She did it because she loved me. Because she spent 5 years watching me, waiting for me to prove I was worthy of that love. Because she believed in redemption long before I knew I needed to be redeemed. He looked at Eleanor again. I failed her. I failed myself. I failed everyone who trusted me. But failure isn't the end. Not if you learn from it. Not if you let it transform you instead of destroy you. He held up the gold rose pin on his lapel. This pin belonged to a woman named Victoria Thornton. She built hospitals and funded research and spent her life trying to make the world better. Her granddaughter gave this to me, not as forgiveness, but as a challenge to be worthy of it. I'm still not worthy, but I'm trying, every day, every decision, every choice. He looked out at the audience. That's what I'm asking all of you to do. Not to be perfect, not to be pure, just to try. To remember that behind every number on a spreadsheet is a human being. To remember that the corners you cut might cost someone their life. My father made that choice. He killed a young man named Thomas Reed to save 9 cents on a valve. I almost made the same choice. I almost killed people to meet my quarterly projections. Don't make that choice, please. Whatever you think you're gaining, it's not worth what you're losing. Your integrity, your humanity, your soul. He straightened his shoulders. I can't undo what I did. I can't bring back the people my father hurt or repair the damage I caused. But I can spend the rest of my life trying to prevent others from making the same mistakes. That's my promise. That's my penance. That's my path to redemption. He stepped back from the podium. Thank you. The applause started slowly. One person, then another. Then the whole auditorium was on its feet. Marcus didn't hear any of it. He was looking at Eleanor. She was crying, but she was smiling too. Afterward, she found him in the green room. That was beautiful, she said. It was the truth. I know. That's what made it beautiful. They stood facing each other. The same way they had at the fountain. The same way they had in the courtroom. The same way they had 100 times before. But something was different now. I'm not asking you to take me back, Marcus said quietly. I know that's not possible. What I did, it's not the kind of thing you get over. Not really. No, it's not. But I want you to know that I'm grateful for the chance, for the foundation, for the pin. He touched his lapel. For believing that redemption was possible, even when I gave you every reason not to. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. Marcus, I need to tell you something. What? She took his hand. Her fingers were warm against his. I've spent 3 years trying to hate you, trying to hold on to the anger, trying to convince myself that you were exactly what you seemed to be, a shallow, greedy man who used me and threw me away. I was that man. You were, but you're not anymore. She squeezed his hand. And I don't know what to do with that. I don't know how to reconcile the man who humiliated me with the man who just gave that speech. Maybe you don't have to reconcile them. Maybe they're just different chapters of the same story. Maybe. She released his hand. I'm not ready to forgive you, Marcus. I don't know if I ever will be. I understand. But I'm ready to stop hating you. I'm ready to let go of the anger and move forward. That's more than I deserve. Probably. She smiled. It was sad and hopeful all at once. But it's what I'm choosing. For me, not for you. She started to walk away. Eleanor. She turned. Thank you. For everything. For seeing something in me worth saving, even when I couldn't see it myself. Eleanor looked at him for a long moment. Don't thank me yet. You still have to prove it, every day, for the rest of your life. I will. I know. She nodded slowly. That's why I'm walking away instead of running. She left. Marcus stood alone in the green room, touching the gold pin on his lapel. Outside, the city was dark and bright and full of possibility. He had no fortune, no company, no wife, no status. But he had something better. He had a chance. And this time he wasn't going to waste it. Because Marcus Washington had finally learned the hardest lesson of all. Redemption isn't a destination, it's a daily choice made over and over until the choice becomes character, and character becomes legacy. He had mocked the wife who wore silence like armor, never knowing she was waiting to see if he deserved her love. She had given him 5 years to prove himself worthy. He had failed. But failure, he now understood, wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of a better one. And that, my friends, is the story of how Marcus Washington learned that the most powerful person in the room isn't always the one with the loudest voice. Sometimes it's the quiet woman in the corner watching, waiting, judging. He thought he was playing chess against a pawn. He never realized he was sitting across from the queen. If this story moved, you hit that like button. If it made you think, leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from. And if you want to see more stories about karma redemption and the consequences of our choices, subscribe and ring that notification bell. Because in this world, the truth always comes out eventually. And when it does, you better be ready to face it. Until next time.